All right, let's just dive right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer. Grab your investigative hats because we are cracking open a seriously chilling paranormal case file today, the totally unexplained vanishing of a young boy named Ali. And look, you know how we do things here. This isn't just your run-of-the-mill campfire ghost story. Now, this is a deep dive into a psychological and supernatural event that literally left a permanent scar on an entire community. We're going to break down the whole shebang, the timeline, the extremely creepy environment, and those terrifying final moments all straight from the source material to figure out exactly what went wrong here. So, we got to start with the ultimate mystery, right? How does a brave young guy walk into a deserted house and just vanish without a single physical trace? You know as well as I do, in any missing persons case, you have to look at the immediate circumstances. And here, no signs of a struggle, no ransom notes, nobody even saw him leave. Just a boy who walked out into the dead of night and never came back. To figure out the how, we really need to dig into the who and the where. Now look at this stark psychological contrast, because it sets up the absolute perfect storm. On one side, you've got this collective, paralyzing anxiety. I mean, as soon as the sun dipped down, the entire village would just fall dead silent. People were locking their doors way early, acting purely on this deeply ingrained survival instinct. But then you have Ali. He was completely different from the other kids. Brave, incredibly skeptical, and honestly, downright defiant. He totally refused to buy into the local paranoia. And that dynamic right there is absolutely crucial. Because Ali's skepticism, that's the exact catalyst for everything that goes down next.
Okay, let's examine our primary crime scene. And let me tell you, this was not just some empty, rundown building. This location was so absolutely steeped in dread that the entire village literally changed its daily routine just to avoid it. It sat right outside the village limits, acting like this heavy physical boundary between safety and, well, the unknown. The locals didn't just think it was old, they explicitly believed things were, quote, not right there. In our line of work, that's what we call a heavily stigmatized property. It's a place where the local lore basically acts as a massive glowing keep out sign.
And then we have this declaration. Listen to exactly what he told his friends. It just proves his absolute stubborn determination to uncover the truth. His friends were terrified, right? They desperately tried to warn him off. But Ali, completely unbothered. He wasn't going up there to play some silly prank. He explicitly stated he was going to see what the reality was. From an investigative standpoint, that is pure premeditation. He knew exactly where he was heading and exactly what he intended to do.
So let's trace his exact movements on that freezing cold night. First up, he waits for the cover of absolute darkness, making sure the whole village is totally asleep. Then, with basically zero visibility, just a half moon and this unnatural chill in the air, he sneaks out, completely undetected. And finally, the arrival. He walks up to the property, and get this, before he even touches the handle, the door just mysteriously swings open. This timeline builds such a precise picture of those final moments. It's almost like the house was inviting him in.
Just imagine it for a second. You're standing there, totally alone in the pitch dark, miles from absolutely anyone who could help you. And suddenly, that dead silence is broken by this slow, agonizing creak. The fact that the door opened entirely unprompted, that tells us the environment itself was reacting to his presence. Now, whether you think it was just a weird draft of wind or something way more sinister, in Ali's mind, the investigation had officially begun. He didn't turn around and run. He crossed the threshold.
Let's move to the interior. You've got heavy dust, thick cobwebs everywhere, immediately confirming that no living person has stepped foot in this space for years. But it's the old portraits on the walls that really get me. They don't just look old, they give off this intense psychological impression that the faces inside them are actively watching you. It's incredibly unsettling. The environment wasn't just abandoned, you guys. It felt suffocating, observant. Honestly, it felt highly predatory.
So he's standing in a house that is 100% confirmed to be empty, right? But suddenly, from the floor right above him, auditory evidence drops. Thok, thok, thok. Heavy, deliberate footsteps echoing right through the rotting wood. He knows he should be alone, but his rapid heartbeat is now syncing up with the rhythm of these phantom footsteps. As an investigator, this is that exact moment where the threat level spikes. We go from a passive, creepy environment straight to an active, physical presence.
We can literally map his escalating panic as he pushes further inside. He bravely heads near the stairs, tracking the sound, but then, a visual anomaly. A shadow swiftly passes right by him. At this point, he shifts from just an observer to an active participant, and he calls out into the dark, "Who is there?" But he doesn't get a voice calling back. Instead, a heavy door violently slams shut in response. The entity inside is now communicating, but it's using aggressive, physical actions to do it.
As co-investigators reviewing this file, we really have to pause here and ask ourselves a serious question. When Ali stood in front of that freshly slammed door, he had a choice. He could have turned back, but that stubborn skepticism drove him forward. When he pushed open that heavy wooden door, what kind of horrific reality was actually waiting for him on the other side? Every single thing leading up to this exact second has been a build-up to a face-to-face encounter.
Well, he finds an old room, and sitting quietly in the pitch darkness is an old man who delivers what I think is our most chilling piece of direct evidence yet. He says, "I am the keeper, and you made a mistake coming here." Notice that? The figure doesn't introduce himself as a ghost or some monster. He's a keeper, a custodian of the property, and he instantly establishes that Ali stepping foot in that house was a massive, grave error. Let's break down this keeper's dark revelation about the haunting's origin, because this is the backstory that blows the case wide open. Apparently, the house originally belonged to a very wealthy family, but a catastrophic accident wiped them all out at once. Because of how sudden and tragic their deaths were, their souls became eternally tethered to the property. This completely changes how we view the location. It's not just an empty building anymore. For all intents and purposes, it is a supernatural mass grave.
Now you really need to pay attention to this specific piece of testimony. We don't harm anyone, but whoever comes here sees the truth. Analytically speaking, that is absolutely fascinating. It presents this twisted, ominous logic. These entities claim they aren't murderers, right? They don't actively hunt down the living. Instead, seeing the truth is framed as this unavoidable consequence of trespassing. The house itself doesn't kill you. The sheer crushing weight of its terrifying reality is what consumes you.
Right after this sinister warning drops, the physical environment shifts one last time. Think about it. What happens when the lights go out? The room suddenly plunges into absolute, suffocating darkness. We have officially arrived at the climax of our investigation. That visual confirmation of the keeper, totally gone. Ali is left completely blind, totally isolated, and incredibly vulnerable to whatever the truth of this house really is.
In the pitch black, the source material explicitly states Ali feels a distinct physical presence standing right behind him. He slowly turns around, and the darkness reveals absolutely nothing. But then, the silence is broken one final time by this grim, disembodied verdict, whispered directly into the void. Now you also belong here. Honestly, it sends shivers down my spine. It's a chilling sentence that doesn't just threaten him, it permanently seals his fate, forcefully drafting him right into the ranks of those bound souls.
So let's examine the concrete facts of the aftermath the very next morning. Down in the village, a tragic void. Ali is reported missing, search parties go out, and they turn up absolutely nothing. He's nowhere to be found. But up at the deserted house, the physical structure hasn't changed at all, except a brand new shadow is now clearly visible standing in the upper window, silently looking out toward the village. That tragic void left behind perfectly corresponds with a terrifying new addition to the haunted house's facade. It is textbook cause and supernatural effect.
I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. Did Ali uncover the truth, only to become the very legend he set out to investigate? By stubbornly demanding to see reality, did he inadvertently offer himself up as the newest resident of that cursed property? It really makes you wonder, was Ali's skepticism and curiosity the exact price required to keep the terror of the deserted house alive for the next generation? Thank you guys so much for joining me to unpack this chilling case file, and as always, keep questioning the shadows.